A quiet afternoon at the supermarket suddenly became the center of national attention when a female military colonel, after calmly asking an officer to pick up what he dropped, was insulted, threatened, and humiliated in public. But she didn't yell. She didn't use rank. She stood her ground and forced the system to answer. One phone call. One moment. And the truth silenced everyone. This story will challenge you to ask, when justice is threatened, will you stay silent or will you speak up? Don't forget to subscribe for more true and powerful stories and tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. On a peaceful Saturday afternoon in Raleigh, North Carolina, Colonel Sela Grant walked into a small local supermarket. Dressed casually in a white shirt, blue jeans, and sneakers, she blended seamlessly with the crowd. Few would suspect that this humble woman had spent her career commanding troops in some of the world's toughest battlefields. Sela cherished these quiet moments. After the stress of her demanding job, nothing felt better than picking up a few essentials and enjoying a calm trip through the aisles. But the tranquility didn't last. A seemingly small moment would soon reveal a much deeper issue. At the end of the aisle, a tall man in a police uniform, Officer Brent Wallace, accidentally dropped a packet of noodles and a bottle of soda. Sela saw him glance at the mess, then walk away without a second thought. As a soldier, Sela had been trained to take responsibility. The officer's indifference made her step forward. "Excuse me, sir," she said calmly. "You dropped something. Perhaps you should pick it up so it doesn't inconvenience others." Instead of acknowledging the mess or apologizing, Officer Wallace gave her a cold, dismissive look. With a smirk, he responded, "Who do you think you are, telling me what to do? I don't have time for trivial things." Sela didn't flinch. As a police officer, you should set an example. Picking up your mess isn't just polite, it's about respect. Wallace mocked her with sarcasm. The small incident quickly escalated. People nearby began to watch. Sela stood tall, calm but firm. The officer's contempt was clear. Arms crossed, he had no intention of listening. Sela's military training helped her stay composed. "This isn't a small matter," she continued. "You're wearing a uniform. Everyone is watching. Your actions reflect your profession." Instead of reflecting, Wallace sneered. "Oh, now you think you know what it means to be a cop? You don't know anything. Just mind your own business." Phones came out. People started recording. But Sela wasn't fazed. Her anger was deeper. It wasn't just about this moment. It was about standing up to prejudice. Her eyes held steady. This was about integrity over arrogance. "You may not realize it," she said quietly, "but your actions now have consequences. Not just for me, but for you." Wallace smirked again, convinced she was just some woman speaking out of turn. But behind Sela's calm expression was strength. She knew this wasn't just about spilled groceries. It was about the value she had spent a lifetime defending. As Wallace's insults continued, Sela's resolve only grew. Her eyes locked on his. There was no hesitation. She would not let he continue to provoke her. Despite his smugness and disdainful smile, Wallace seemed to be waiting for her to lose control, to let her emotions get the better of her. But Sela didn't give him that satisfaction. Instead, she stood her ground, embodying the disciplined, reasoned approach of a seasoned commander. "I'm not here to argue," she said, her voice authoritative, carrying the weight of experience. "I just want to remind you that your actions don't only affect those around you, they also reflect who you are as a police officer. You should know your responsibilities better than anyone." Her words had the desired effect. The crowd, which had been murmuring from the sidelines, began to take more notice. Some even stopped shopping altogether, their attention fixed on the confrontation. Wallace, sensing the eyes on him, tried to hide his discomfort with more arrogance. He laughed loudly, his voice echoing in the aisle. "Responsibility?" he scoffed, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Who do you think you are, telling me what to do? You're just an ordinary woman. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't think you have the right to stand here and lecture me. You don't understand anything about my job." His words, laced with both sexism and racism, were meant to diminish her. But Sela didn't let them affect her. She took a slow, deliberate breath, keeping her composure. She knew her actions now would speak louder than words. "I don't need you to understand who I am," she replied, voice steady but filled with conviction. "What I want you to understand is that every person in this society deserves respect. And if you can't give that, Then you're the one who doesn't deserve the uniform you're wearing. Wallace laughed again, louder this time, mocking her openly. What do you think you can do to me? I'm a cop. The law's on my side. And you're just an ordinary woman of color. Know your place before you get yourself in trouble. But Selah did not flinch. She could feel the weight of the moment, the eyes on her, the silence building. This was no longer a simple disagreement, it had become a stand for respect, for equality, and for integrity. She stood upright, shoulders squared, her eyes unwavering. Selah took a deliberate step forward, her presence unshaken. Her voice calm yet sharp cut through the tension. You can think of me however you want. But remember, this arrogance and contempt for others can't hide your moral shortcomings. I'm not here to fight for power with you, but I won't stand by and let you continue abusing it. For the first time, she noticed a crack in Wallace's confidence. He frowned, trying to find fear in her, but all he saw was someone as solid as stone. The crowd was fully focused now, some holding up phones to record. Wallace snarled, "Don't try to act noble in front of me. You're nothing but a troublemaker. I could have you thrown out right now." Selah didn't smile, but there was a calm twitch at the corner of her lips. "If you think your power gives you the right to behave like this, then I'll let the law answer that. And no, I'm not afraid." And eyes exuded undeniable authority. "You may continue to insult me," Selah said, her voice firm and weighted with conviction. "But remember, I'm not here alone. There are many witnesses. If you think words will put me down, you're mistaken. I'm not standing here to defend my personal honor. I stand here to defend the values I've spent my life preserving." The entire supermarket fell into an almost complete silence. No one spoke, but the looks in the crowd made it clear they were all on Selah's side. Wallace, still trying to maintain his tough exterior, could no longer hide his embarrassment as he realized the situation was slipping out of his control. Selah stood unflinching, a beacon of calm in a storm of injustice and prejudice. Though the tension mounted, she remained composed, knowing that every word, every action now served as a testament to justice and integrity. Wallace, growing desperate, stepped forward, his tone hard and aggressive. "I warn you, don't make this worse. I'm the police. I have the right to deal with you right here." His words rang out, but they didn't scare Selah. Instead, they strengthened her resolve. Calmly, she pulled out her phone, not in panic, but with the quiet decisiveness of someone prepared. "You have your rights," Selah said, voice soft but sharp as steel, "and I have mine. Let's see whose side the law is on." She dialed. Her voice was steady. "Hello. I need support at the Central Supermarket. A police officer is abusing his power and threatening people. I need authorities to respond immediately." Wallace's eyes widened. He realized he was no longer in control. The crowd, once silent, murmured louder. Some even stopped recording just to make their own calls. "What do you think you're doing?" Wallace roared, stepping forward. Selah didn't move. Her eyes locked with his, unwavering. "I'm doing what you're supposed to be doing," she said, defending fairness and responsibility. At that moment, police sirens pierced the air. The crowd parted. Officers entered. Selah raised her hand and pointed directly at Wallace. "This is the person you need to look at," she said calmly. "All of his actions have been documented and witnessed." Wallace, stripped of his arrogance, began to stumble. His confident expression faded into confusion and fear. Selah stood as steady as ever, her calmness as if she'd seen this moment coming. Just then, the supermarket doors opened and the mayor stepped in. The room, already tense, grew still. His presence was commanding. His eyes scanned the scene, then stopped on Selah. Wallace stiffened, now pale. His usual arrogance had disappeared. "Mr. Mayor, this is just a misunderstanding," he stammered. "I didn't mean anything. It's just that she—" "Shut up," the mayor interrupted, his voice cold and authoritative. "I came here because of an urgent call from Colonel Juan Selah Grant, a woman I respect deeply. Your behavior was reported and witnessed by many. Don't think your excuses will erase what you've done." Selah's eyes met his. She felt a small sense of relief, but her expression remained strong. The fight wasn't over. The mayor walked over, his tone softening. "Colonel Grant," he said with respect, "I hope you weren't harmed. This behavior is unacceptable and will be dealt with." "I'm fine," Selah replied. "But this isn't just about me. It's about holding those in power accountable. If I hadn't stood up today, many more would have continued to be treated unfairly. Wallace stood frozen as the mayor spoke with a cold, final tone. You've abused your power, insulted a high-ranking officer, and damaged public trust. You no longer deserve that uniform. A woman from the crowd handed the mayor a phone showing the incident. He watched briefly, his expression darkening. This behavior is intolerable, he declared. Strip him of his weapons and badge. A full investigation will follow. Wallace was speechless as officers followed the order. Outside, the crowd erupted in applause, not for vengeance, but for justice. Sela, though not seeking recognition, felt relieved. When the mayor turned to her, he spoke with deep respect. Colonel Grant, this city needs people like you. I'm sorry for what you endured. Sela nodded. I just hope this leads to real change. The mayor promised it would. As Sela stepped back into the sunlight, she felt lighter. But she knew the fight for fairness wasn't over. She was ready to keep standing for herself and for others without a voice. Wallace, now disgraced, was led away. His once arrogant face now showed only fear. At the police station, he was questioned. The video and witnesses left no room for denial. The police chief, informed by the mayor, called Wallace's actions a stain on the department. His suspension was swift. As the investigation unfolded, media coverage exploded. The video went viral. Stories from others who had faced Wallace's misconduct surfaced, worsening his case. Former allies distanced themselves. Colleagues expressed disappointment. Alone in his house, Wallace sat in silence, burdened by guilt. Meanwhile, Sela continued her life quietly but with purpose. She was thanked and admired by the public, though she never sought the spotlight. Her courage sparked change, not just holding Wallace accountable but also pushing for deeper reform in policing. In the end, Wallace lost his badge and faced legal charges, including abuse of power and threats with a weapon. At trial, the man who once stood with arrogance now bowed his head in shame, reminded that power must be earned, not abused. Sela's actions became a symbol of strength. Though the community had been shaken, her bravery inspired many. To others, she was a hero. But to herself, she was simply doing her duty to uphold justice and protect dignity. In the following weeks, local police departments came under closer scrutiny. Training and recruitment processes were reviewed. Seminars on ethics and responsibility were held, and Sela was invited as a keynote speaker. Standing before hundreds, she shared her experience, reminding all that courage, when grounded in truth, can spark real and lasting change. Sela Grant never sought applause or recognition. Her story was about using her voice to inspire change and demand accountability. To her, power only mattered when used to protect, not to oppress. As for Officer Wallace, his career was officially over. The trial stripped him of both freedom and dignity. The community turned its back on him, and even his former allies could not forgive his abuse of power. In isolation, Wallace came to understand a hard truth: arrogance and injustice not only harm others but ultimately destroy oneself. Meanwhile, Sela became a symbol of justice. Her actions were shared widely. Videos, articles, and public discussions inspired others to speak out against injustice. But Sela remained grounded. She continued her service in the military, living proof that real strength comes from integrity and the courage to do what's right. When she looked back, she felt no regret, only quiet pride. Her actions had helped change part of society for the better. For her, the supermarket incident wasn't an end, but a reminder. Justice demands courage and unity, and she was prepared to keep fighting for the values she believed in. Sela's legacy wasn't just in headlines or viral clips. It was reflected in real change in the military and beyond. Her defiance inspired not only policy shifts but also new energy among women and people of color who saw in her a mirror of their own struggles and resilience. Every time her story was told, it reminded people not just of a brave moment in a grocery store but of a woman unafraid to stand tall, no matter the cost. The workshops she joined inspired law enforcement officers to uphold human dignity. The reforms she influenced began shaping a more ethical, responsible police culture. But her true legacy lived not in policies or recognition, it lived in the way she carried herself daily. Young people looked to her as a role model, learning how to face injustice with calm, patience, and resolve. Sela didn't seek fame, yet the respect she earned spoke louder than any spotlight. Through every trial, Sela stood firm. She knew legacy wasn't measured by awards but by the values one leaves behind. And hers was clear, a legacy of justice, a path for future generations to follow, those who would never be afraid to confront injustice. Long after the incident ended, Scylla Seth's legacy lived on, not just in seminars and speeches, but in the hearts of those still fighting for a more just and equitable world. Scylla Grant saw her experience as part of a larger mission. She realized that injustice isn't rare, it's widespread and rooted deep in society. As she heard more stories from victims of abuse and discrimination, her sense of responsibility grew stronger. She understood that change couldn't rely on a few individuals, it needed a collective movement where everyone had the courage to speak up and defend their rights. Scylla launched awareness campaigns, urging especially those in law enforcement to rethink their roles in promoting justice. She organized meetings, workshops, and media outreach to inspire people to stand up instead of staying silent. Each of us has the right to reject abuse, and each of us can make a difference, she often said. Her efforts went beyond the military. She reached out to civilians, especially those who felt marginalized or powerless, encouraging them not to fear authority because justice is a right, not a privilege, and it must be protected for all. Scylla's movement began to spread. Across cities and towns, people started sharing their own stories of being ignored, mistreated, or silenced. Her message resonated with mothers, students, veterans, and workers who had long felt powerless in the face of systemic injustice. She gave them not just a voice, but a mirror, someone who stood with dignity and refused to back down. Universities invited her to speak. Civil rights organizations asked for her guidance. Police departments, once resistant to change, began requesting her input on reform programs. Slowly, her words began to reshape not just policies, but mindsets. She didn't promise overnight change, she promised persistence. Justice is not a destination, she said. It's a direction. And we must walk it together. And so, Scylla walked. Through interviews, speeches, and community visits. Through long nights reading letters from strangers who said, "Because of you, I finally stood up for myself." Through quiet mornings where she gathered strength not from applause, but from purpose. She never lost sight of that one day in the supermarket, a moment that might have broken someone else but instead became her call to action. What began as humiliation became a movement. What began as anger became clarity. And as the years passed, Scylla didn't fade. She became a fixture in the fight for equity, living proof that integrity, when held steady in the face of injustice, can shift the course of society, not through grand gestures, but through one voice standing firm. One voice reminding us that the uniform doesn't define the protector. The action does. And true power lies not in authority, but in accountability. A few weeks later, the city still hadn't quieted down. Local newspapers continued to publish editorials discussing power, responsibility, and the courage of a woman who dared to stand against injustice. Public forums were held in schools, city halls, and community centers, all circling around the same question: what kind of police force do we want to have? A few months later, a wave of reform began to spread. A new training program on ethics and accountability was launched, using her supermarket incident as a case study. Her name wasn't just remembered as a witness, but as a symbol. A video of her calm confrontation with power was shown at a police academy graduation. One instructor said, "This is leadership not with weapons, but with truth." Meanwhile, Scylla lived as humbly as ever. She turned down offers to run for office or become a media personality. To her, true strength didn't come from applause, but from quiet actions that spark lasting change. Whenever someone thanked her for helping me stop being silent, she would simply smile and say, "I didn't do anything grand. I just didn't step back." The legacy of her story wasn't in a courtroom, an apology, or a speech. It was in people beginning to believe that no matter who you are or where you stand, if you dare to stand for what's right, you won't stand alone. Her impact wasn't fame, it was resonance. A spark strong enough to light the forgotten corners. Because justice isn't just a result, it's a journey. And thanks to people like her, that journey now has more voices, walking forward without fear. This story leaves us with a troubling question. Was what we witnessed just an isolated incident, or part of a system that has existed for too long? We learned that silence in the face of injustice is a form of complicity. That people may be mistaken, may err, but when power is in their hands, and they still choose oppression, it's no longer a mistake, it's a conscious decision. The message is clear: justice doesn't come from position, it comes from action. Truth doesn't need to be shouted, only defended with persistence. We want to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in that situation? Would you have spoken up? Do you believe that one small act can lead to big change? Leave your opinion, because every voice matters. As for me, this is not just a story. It is a reminder we don't need to be heroes, we just need to not look away. Because if everyone chooses to stand with justice, then justice will never stand alone. Note: this story is entirely fictional and created for the purpose of raising awareness. It highlights issues of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating everyone with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose violence, prejudice, and injustice in all forms. Viewer discretion is advised.